What would you do if the person who made you happiest was also the one hiding the biggest secret from you? This is the story of how my life changed when I returned to the house where I grew up. At first, everything seemed normal, but slowly I began to see the truth behind the smile of someone I thought I could trust. I had been away from home for 2 years. Work kept me busy in the city, and I only spoke to my aunt on the phone. She was the woman who raised me after my parents died when I was a child. One day she called and told me she wanted me to come back and stay for a while. She said I needed rest and that she had a surprise for me. Her voice sounded both happy and nervous, and I could not understand why. If you enjoy stories like this one and want to practice your English, please remember to subscribe, share this video with your friends, and write a comment about what you think will happen next. When I arrived at the old house, my aunt was waiting at the door. She hugged me tightly, and I could see her eyes were shining with emotion. It felt good to be back, but I noticed something different. There was a young man standing behind her, holding a tray with 2 glasses of juice. He smiled at me politely, and my aunt quickly pulled him forward. "This is Daniel," she said warmly. "He has been staying with me for some months. He is the son of an old family friend. His parents passed away last year, so I decided to give him a place to live." I shook his hand and said hello. He looked about my age, maybe 24 or 25. His smile was kind, and his voice was soft when he greeted me. There was something about him that I could not describe. It was as if his eyes wanted to tell me something that his words could not. I felt a strange connection, although I had just met him. That first evening, we all had dinner together. My aunt was in an unusually cheerful mood. She kept making jokes, asking Daniel to pass me dishes, and watching us closely as we spoke. I did not think too much about it, but I noticed that she seemed very pleased whenever Daniel and I exchanged a smile. Later, when I went to bed, I lay awake for a long time thinking about him. I told myself it was silly. He was just a guest, and I should not pay so much attention. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of fresh bread. When I walked into the kitchen, Daniel was helping my aunt prepare breakfast. They had made my favorite dishes, the ones I loved as a child. I felt touched, but also a little embarrassed. Daniel pulled out a chair for me and smiled again. That smile gave me a warm feeling inside, but it also confused me. Why was I reacting like this to someone I hardly knew? Over the next few days, Daniel and I spent more time together. My aunt often asked him to take me shopping or show me around the town. She said she was tired, but I felt she wanted us to spend time alone. Daniel and I talked a lot during these small trips. He told me about his school days, his parents, and how lonely it felt after losing them. I told him about my life in the city, about my job, and about how I sometimes felt lost even in the middle of a crowd. The more we spoke, the closer we became. He had a way of listening that made me feel understood. His words were simple, but his eyes carried a depth I could not explain. At times, I caught him watching me in silence, and when I asked what he was thinking, he only smiled. That smile again. It was gentle, but also secretive, as if he carried a story that was hidden from me. One evening, we went to the park near the river. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with orange and pink colors. We sat on a bench, talking about small things, when suddenly Daniel grew quiet. He looked at the water and then at me. "You know," he said softly, "sometimes life gives us things we don't expect. People meet for reasons they don't always understand." I asked him what he meant, but he only shook his head and smiled that same smile. Something inside me stirred, and I could not stop thinking about those words long after we returned home. That night, my aunt came to my room. She sat on my bed and asked me how I felt about Daniel. Her tone was light, but her eyes were serious. I told her he seemed kind and thoughtful, and she nodded slowly, as if she had been waiting for that answer. Then she kissed my forehead and said goodnight, leaving me full of questions. I could not sleep. I kept replaying Daniel's words in my mind and wondering why my aunt cared so much about my opinion of him. Was she planning something? Did she want us to become more than friends? Or was there another reason she had not yet shared with me? The next day, Daniel and I went to the market together. We laughed as we tried different fruits, and he helped me carry heavy bags. When we stopped at a cafe, he told me about his dreams of traveling, of seeing the world beyond our small town. His voice was full of hope, but there was also a sadness hidden behind it. Again, that smile appeared, hiding something I could not yet see. When we returned home, my aunt greeted us with unusual excitement. She asked us to sit together at the table and told Daniel to stay close to me. I felt embarrassed, and Daniel laughed softly, but I could see he was blushing too. My aunt clapped her hands and said she was happy to see us getting along so well. Her behavior was strange, and I started to suspect that she was hiding something. That evening, after dinner, Daniel and I sat in the garden. The air was cool, and the moonlight made everything look softer. He looked at me seriously and said, "There are things you don't know about me. One day, I will tell you, but not tonight." Then he smiled again, that mysterious smile that both comforted and unsettled me. I wanted to ask more, but I stopped myself. Maybe the right time had not yet come. Still, I could not shake the feeling that his secret was something that could change everything between us. The days passed quickly, and with each one I felt closer to Daniel. I tried to convince myself that it was only friendship, but deep inside I knew it was something more. I found myself waiting for his voice, his laugh, and most of all, his smile. It was strange because I had known him for such a short time, yet he already felt like part of my life. One afternoon, my aunt asked us to go into the town to buy some things for the house. She gave Daniel a long list and then looked at me with a smile. "Go with him," she said. "It will be nice for you both." I could see the meaning in her eyes. She wanted me and Daniel to spend more time together, and she made no effort to hide it. As we walked down the busy streets, Daniel carried most of the bags while I walked beside him. He asked me about my time in the city, about the people I worked with, and about my dreams for the future. I told him that sometimes I wanted a simple life, a small home, and a family of my own. He listened carefully, and when I looked at him, I noticed that same mysterious smile. It was as if he knew something I did not. We stopped at a bookshop on the way back. Daniel said he loved reading, especially stories about faraway lands and hidden truths. I laughed and told him that I liked those too, though sometimes they made me cry. He chose a book from the shelf and handed it to me. "This one is for you," he said. "It is about someone searching for who they really are." I thanked him, but I wondered why he had chosen that book in particular. That evening, after dinner, I sat in my room and opened the book. The story was about a young woman who grew up not knowing her true family. As I read, I felt uneasy. Was Daniel trying to tell me something through this book? The thought stayed with me long after I closed it. The next morning, my aunt asked Daniel to help her in the kitchen, so I went to the garden alone. The sun was warm, and I tried to clear my mind, but my thoughts kept returning to him. I knew I was falling for him, and I was afraid. What if my aunt had other plans for me? What if Daniel did not feel the same? I felt trapped between hope and fear. Later that day, Daniel came to find me. He had a serious look on his face, and I felt my heart beat faster. We sat on the garden bench, and for a moment he said nothing. Then he turned to me and said, "There is something important I need to tell you, but I don't know how." His eyes looked troubled, and I could see he was fighting with himself. I placed my hand gently on his arm and told him he could trust me. For a moment, he looked as if he would speak, but then he shook his head and smiled again. "Not yet," he whispered. "One day soon, but not today." I felt both relief and disappointment. His smile calmed me, but the secret behind it made me restless. That night, I could not sleep. I thought about every moment we had shared, every word he had spoken, every look in his eyes. I wondered what kind of secret could be so heavy that he could not share it with me. I also wondered why my aunt always seemed so pleased when we were together, as if she was waiting for something to happen. The following week, my aunt suggested that Daniel and I should take a short trip to the nearby hills. She said the fresh air would be good for me, and she wanted us to enjoy the beauty of nature together. Daniel agreed, and so did I, though part of me feared that being alone with him would make my feelings even stronger. The journey was peaceful. The hills were covered with green trees, and the sound of birds filled the air. Daniel walked beside me, sometimes holding my hand when the path was steep. I felt safe with him, and at the same time, I felt my heart growing heavier with emotions I could no longer control. When we reached the top, we sat on a large rock and looked out at the valley below. The view was breathtaking, but I could not take my eyes off him. He turned to me, and for a long moment we simply looked at each other. Then, without speaking, he leaned closer and kissed me gently. It was soft, full of care, and yet it carried something deeper. I felt my face grow warm, and my hands shook. I whispered his name, but he only smiled again, that same secret smile. "I should not have done that." he said softly. But I could not stop myself. I wanted to ask him why, but my words froze. Deep inside, I knew his heart was full of something he had not yet told me. On the way back, we spoke little. The silence between us was not heavy, but it was filled with thoughts we could not share. I wanted to believe that the kiss meant he cared for me, yet I also feared the truth that he carried behind his smile. That evening, my aunt noticed something in my face. She touched my cheek and asked if I was happy. I wanted to say yes, but I could not. I only nodded, and she seemed satisfied. Then she looked at Daniel and said, "Remember, secrets do not stay hidden forever." Her words surprised both of us, and Daniel's eyes darkened for a moment before he turned away. I lay awake that night, thinking about her words. Did she know what Daniel was hiding? Was she part of it? I could not understand. I decided that I would find out, no matter how painful the truth might be. The next day, I followed Daniel quietly when he went to the old storage room behind the house. He carried a box and placed it on a table. When he left, I slipped inside. The box was full of letters and photographs. My hands trembled as I looked through them. Some of the letters were written by my aunt, but others were signed by a man whose name I did not know. The photos showed my aunt, Daniel's parents, and a baby that looked strangely familiar. Before I could understand more, Daniel returned and found me there. His face was pale, and he took the box from my hands. "You should not have seen this," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were full of fear and pain. "Now you will want answers, and I am not ready to give them." I begged him to explain, but he shook his head and whispered, "Not yet." Then he closed the box and walked out, leaving me alone with my questions. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would break. What secret was he hiding? And why did my aunt seem to know all about it? From that day, the atmosphere in the house changed. My aunt still smiled, but her eyes looked tired. Daniel still laughed with me, but there was a shadow in his gaze. And every time he smiled at me, I could feel the weight of the truth behind it, pressing down on both of us. I knew that the time was coming when he would have to tell me everything. I only feared that when he did, it would destroy the fragile happiness we had built together. The days after I discovered the box felt heavy and confusing. I tried to act normal at the table with my aunt and Daniel, but inside I was burning with questions. Every time I looked at him, I remembered the photographs, the letters, and the way his voice trembled when he told me I should not have seen them. His smile, the smile that once brought me comfort, now carried a weight that hurt me deeply. I thought about asking my aunt directly. She had always been open with me, but lately I noticed she avoided my eyes. When she spoke, her words were light, but her tone carried something unspoken. I wanted to believe she was only trying to protect me, but the silence around her and Daniel felt like a wall I could not break through. One night, I gathered all my courage and went to her room. She was sitting in her chair with a blanket over her shoulders, reading. I stood by the door for a moment before speaking. Aunt, I need to know the truth. Please, no more secrets. I saw the letters and the photos in the box Daniel was hiding. I cannot live like this, not knowing. Her face paled, and her hands shook slightly as she closed the book. She looked at me with sad eyes and whispered, "It is not my secret to tell Anna. It belongs to him. But I will say this. Everything I have done, everything I have hidden, was only to protect you. I wanted you to be happy, even if that meant keeping you in the dark." My heart broke at her words, but I also grew angry. How could she say she wanted me happy when her silence was destroying me? The next day, I could not stop myself. I went to Daniel and told him that I would not live with questions anymore. "If you care for me," I said firmly, "you must tell me the truth. I have seen the photos. I know there is something between us that you are hiding. Please, Daniel, no more smiles to cover the truth." For a long moment, he just stood there, his face pale and his eyes full of pain. Then he sighed and nodded. He asked me to meet him in the garden that night. My hand shook as I waited under the old tree, the same place where we had first grown close. When he arrived, he looked different. His smile was gone, replaced by a sadness that cut deep into my heart. "Anna," he began, "the truth will hurt you. It will hurt both of us. But I cannot hide it from you anymore." He told me the story slowly, as if every word cost him a piece of his soul. Years ago, my parents had died when I was still a baby. At least, that was what I had always believed. The truth, however, was more complicated. My aunt had not only raised me, but had also hidden the truth about my birth. My real father had been Daniel's father too. We were connected by blood. I felt the ground move under my feet. My chest grew tight, and I could hardly breathe. "What are you saying?" I whispered. Daniel's voice was heavy as he explained further. His father had lived 2 lives, one with his mother and another with mine. When my parents died, my aunt took me in to protect me from shame and pain. She never wanted me to know that the man I thought was only Daniel's father had also been mine. Tears filled my eyes, and I shook my head. "No, this cannot be true. It is impossible." But Daniel's face told me it was real. He pulled out one of the old letters I had seen in the box. It was written in my aunt's handwriting, confirming everything he said. The words blurred before my eyes as I tried to read, but the meaning was clear enough. My whole life had been built on a lie. I ran back into the house, unable to face him. My aunt tried to stop me, but I pushed past her and locked myself in my room. I cried until my body ached. The boy I had fallen for, the one who made me believe in hope again, was also my half-brother. My first kiss, my first deep feeling of connection, was now something forbidden and painful. I did not know how to live with this truth. The days after that were filled with silence. I could not look at Daniel without feeling broken, yet I could not stay away from him either. My aunt grew weaker. her health fading as the weight of the secret and my pain pressed down on her. She often sat quietly, tears in her eyes, and I knew she carried her own guilt. I wanted to forgive her, but I could not. Not yet. Daniel tried to speak to me again, but I stopped him. "Do not say more," I told him. "Every word only hurts me more. I need space. I need time." He respected my request, but I saw the sorrow in his eyes. His smile was gone now, replaced with a silence that spoke louder than words. The secret behind his smile had finally been revealed, and it destroyed everything we had shared. One evening, my aunt called me to her room. She looked weaker than ever, her skin pale and her voice thin. She held my hand and whispered, "I am sorry, Anna. I thought I was protecting you. I wanted you to have a normal life, not one filled with shame. I never meant for you to fall for Daniel. Never. But I was blind. I did not see how close you two were becoming." I cried beside her, torn between anger and love. She had raised me, cared for me, and given me everything. Yet she had also hidden the truth that destroyed my heart. Before I could say more, she pressed a folded letter into my hand. "If I am gone, read this. It will explain everything. Please remember that I loved you like my own child." Not long after, my aunt passed away quietly in her sleep. I sat by her bed, holding her hand until it grew cold. My world felt empty again, just as it had when I was a child. After the funeral, I went to my room and opened the letter she had left me. In it, she confessed everything in detail. She explained how my real father had lived a double life and how she took me in to save me from a future of gossip and pain. She begged for my forgiveness and asked me not to hate her for keeping the truth from me. She ended the letter with words that broke me. "Daniel is not your enemy. He is your brother. Please do not destroy yourself with hate. Remember that you are loved." I read the letter again and again until the words lost meaning. My tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. I felt trapped in a nightmare I could not escape. Daniel knocked on my door that night, asking softly if he could come in. For a moment I wanted to let him, to hold him and cry with him. But then I remembered the truth, and my heart closed. I told him to leave, and after a long silence, I heard his footsteps fade away. Time passed, but the wound did not heal. Daniel eventually left the house, saying he needed to start fresh somewhere else. He hugged me goodbye, and though I wanted to cling to him, I stayed still. He whispered, "You will always be important to me, Anna. Nothing can change that." Then he smiled one last time, a broken smile with no secret behind it anymore, only pain. I watched him walk away until he disappeared down the road. My chest ached, but I knew it was the end. The secret behind his smile had destroyed everything we might have had. What remained was only silence, regret, and the memory of a love that could never be. Now, when I look back on those days, I ask myself if I would have chosen differently if I had known from the start. Perhaps it is better not to know, or perhaps the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a lie. I still do not have the answer. What I do know is that secrets have the power to break even the strongest hearts. Mine was one of them. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and write a comment below about what you would have done in my place. Your support helps me bring more emotional stories for your English learning and practice.